From the Four Rivers Cultural Center in Ontario, Oregon, we bring you the third annual Tradition Keepers Festival, highlighting cultural artists in Oregon's Treasure Valley and beyond. In this episode, you'll meet folk musician Gary Eller.
I looked to the north and I looked to the south, saw the Californians a-comin'. Picks and pans and shovels on their back, they were traveling their way up the salmon. Left California with a 100-pound pack, rested on the Siskiyou Mountains. Took a drink of red-eye and started on the track, for it's a hard road to travel up the salmon. Save your money, boys, to pay your way through to the one on Sam against Caribou. Don't be hasty, get into a fever, for you're all make a fortune up on the Salmon River.
It all was country music, and it's still all country music, but over the years, these artificial divisions got ossified, and now country music, that term, has a totally different meaning to most people. But mixed in all of that were a lot of story songs or event ballads, happy events, but more often they were about shootings and floods and hangings and things like coal mine disasters and so on. But my mentors were really the great Hal Cannon, in my opinion, the greatest of all living Western American folklorists. And he worked mightily in Utah, where he was the director of traditional arts for the Utah Commission on the Arts, Idaho State folklorist for many years. Then he had a heavy hand in creating the now very popular Cowboy Poet Gathering in Elko every year. And Hal is a hero for me. But also people like Rick Ardinger, former director of the Idaho Humanities Council, who kind of helped me get started here in Idaho, and now Stephen Hatcher, the state folklorist for the state of Idaho. Those people all have been very important to me in what I do. And of course, people like the famous Lomaxes, who really set the standard for American folk music collecting in the early 1900s through the mid 1900s. The music is magical in telling stories. As I say, I have for each story, I have 150 words in 3 minutes roughly to get a point across. And my goal was always to leave a sentence or a phrase that they can remember that will stick in their heads, and perhaps they can go dig a little deeper on the subject. And if you think about it, in a normal 3-minute conversation, if you can leave a phrase or a sentence that lingers in a person's mind, that's pretty good. And music is such a great way to do that, because sometimes you get a melody that becomes an earworm, an audio earworm, with a line that goes with it, and then people remember that. So music is actually really magical in conveying history sometimes. And the way I tell history is from the bottom up, from the common person's experiences, not from an academician's or professional historian's view, which is more from a 30,000-foot level down. And both have value. There were hardly any actual Idaho songs in it. There were a few. There were mostly songs that were brought here from somewhere else. Songs that I could find in any of the lower 48 states. So I knew very well that these people came to Idaho from Missouri or West Virginia or Tennessee, did not stop writing songs when they got here. I knew they were out there somewhere. Rosalie was several generations too late to find those songs. And it's because, the way I describe it, the Lomaxes never got to Idaho. And so the critical song collecting period in the early 1900s was not covered very well in Idaho. And then when 1923 radio came along, and about the same time that mass production of records made it possible for common people to have records, they started hearing music from Tennessee and Virginia and West Virginia and Georgia, but there were no recordings made in Idaho. So I think perhaps they decided what they were hearing in this more commercial music must be better music than what they had. And so they stopped playing their music in about 2 generations. the chain of custody in those songs was lost. And so that's my theory. I've had that for a dozen years, and I've challenged people to come up with a better theory, and nothing's surfaced yet. So I think the chain of custody got cut, and to find those old songs, you're not going to find them in living people. You have to go spend hours going through old newspapers, dusty files in libraries, small museums, county museums. Once in a great while, I get a phone call and somebody finds a paper that their great-grandparents, they're in the cedar chest of their great-grandparents. Once in a while that happens, but mostly I find it by just digging and doing research. And here we are, a couple hundred songs later. To me, this is just me, but there's something just not quite right about somebody writing a song like Take Me Home, Country Roads to West Virginia, written by people who have never been in the state and managed to make several geographical errors in the first verse. That's not very credible to me. So I'd rather hear local people making mistakes about geography, or maybe getting the history a little bit garbled because that was the truth to them. That's how they saw the truth. So there's this kind of a sense of honesty about the way untrained people in folk tradition relate to news, to tell about what's happening in their lives. And so that's why pop music has always left me really cold. And there's not a whole lot on the radio I hear today that's very moving to me. I think you ignore history at risk. And what you find when you did through these old songs and songs much, much older than this, the same themes tend to recur. And, human nature probably really isn't any different than it was when history started being recorded 4,000 years ago. And people make the same mistakes. They have the same impulses, the same urges. Maybe we're a little more refined and more sophisticated. But it seems as though about every 2 generations, a generation comes along that thinks it's just so much smarter than anybody that came before them, and then proceed to make a lot of the same mistakes all over again. So I think, to me, these old songs can be a reminder of that. Don't, as they say back in the Appalachians, don't get above your raisin too much. Keep your perspective. Maybe you're not quite as smart as you think you are. And there's something to be learned by paying attention to the past. And music is just such a wonderful, wonderful way to tell stories in small bite-sized pieces. You can get a nugget in a very short period of time. And then if you're really interested, you can take a deep dive and read as much and as deeply as you want. So that's my approach to it. And so when I write a song, I do a deep dives. So I make sure that I have a reasonable idea. I know what I'm talking about. Somewhere down the line, there's going to be another crazy person like me that loves these old story songs. And I want to make it so it's not so hard to find them the next time around. And so that pushes me to not only find them, but to record them or get either myself or to get somebody that's can handle a tune and an instrument, but more importantly, the voice, and knows what they're talking about when they're singing the song. And then get those published in these booklets with CDs and get those into major libraries, including the Library of Congress. And so that's the permanency. And then anybody in the world, the way holdings are indexed now, can find these songs easily. And these songs are not lost now. They're there, they can be found. And so if they get thrown out by some family because they don't know what they're looking at, taken to the dump when the old person died, okay, we still have the song. So if it's not published, chances are it's going to go away.